What if I told you it was possible to learn how to flick like this? This is Zekee, and you may be surprised to learn that he runs 2 cents with 400 DPI in CS and Valorant. That's 52 centimeters for 360, which is slow by most people's standards, but he makes it look like this. A lot of players will straight up say this style is inconsistent and impractical, and sure, we are seeing some of the flashiness here, but the fundamentals are there. If he misses with his first flick, he falls back on trained aiming habits like microcorrections. Believe it or not, this is all trainable. And if you want to shoot like this, it just comes down to picking the right focuses. Even if you don't want to go as extreme as Zekee, learning how to have speed with control is beneficial for everyone on every setup. For example, Zekee had to solve a huge problem here. Stopping. Observe how the crosshair doesn't glide after a high tension flick. With glass having such low dynamic and static friction, stopping with control is really tough. So Zekee has learned how to use his fingers like car brakes for extra stopping power. Additionally, to counter the super responsive nature of glass pads, Zekee uses 400 DPI on a low resolution to introduce more stability on his microcorrections, as not as many errors will be registered. Like with any skill, the consistency is achieved by closing the distance between our A game, our best, and our C game, our worst. So to raise our skill floor, we must put time into identifying our weaknesses and then working on them. Most players don't ever think about their aiming weaknesses, let alone attempt to target them specifically. So if we ask the right questions, we can break down anyone's aiming style to figure out strengths and weaknesses. How fast is the crosshair moving? How clean is the line from A to B? How accurate is the first movement? Is the micro adjustment good if the movement misses? When Zekee posts clips, the aiming style seems extreme, but if we look at another aimer with highly optimized aim habits and similar sensitivity, minigod, someone who no one would call inconsistent or impractical, we can see many similarities in the aim habits. Here you can see minigod missing a flick and using a microcorrection. Here we see it with Zekee. There isn't actually a huge difference in terms of mechanics. Both players are utilizing crosshair placement, pre-aiming, movement and game sense to get frags. Arguably, minigod does look a little more clinical with his crosshair placement, but this is a stylistic choice and Mini can be extremely fast and controlled when the situation demands. It's just not a core feature of his aiming style. The main difference comes from the types of fights attempted. Zekee's gameplay and decision making is more aggressive and his aiming style reflects this. By pushing speed, he's able to confidently handle more chaotic scenarios. Bang, a professional Valorant player, has the same sensitivity as Zekee and also has a similar aiming style with a lot of lightning fast flicks. Bang's setup is very different though. He uses cloth pads like the Logitech G440 and Artisan Zero. So instead of using his fingers to break the mouse for stopping power, Bang uses the natural friction of the mousepad instead. Bang is more wrist dominant and uses mouse lifts to frequently recenter the mouse to neutral to maximize his wrist aiming. Conversely, Zekee is more balanced between using arm, wrist and fingers as needed. The point in showing you these differences is that speed and control can be achieved by taking many different roads. The reason someone may choose between these different paths is to do with personal preferences. What you use must feel fun and natural to some degree because you're going to be training on it a lot. Flick confidence like this is impressive, and it will come for players who are well prepared and repeatedly reinforce high quality aim habits. We always default to our aim habits after all. When we're totally focused and engaged with our main game, our full attention must be on things like awareness, decision making, doing our job for the team, not our aim. A while back, Elise revealed to me on a podcast, he gets into the zone most often when he is actively calling and actively focused on in-game awareness. If we put ourselves in bad fights because we're focused on winning with aim, we'll just lose confidence and responsiveness. The goal shouldn't be to get the clip. Focus on winning the round and the clips will follow. When we talk about the type of speed we see in Zekee's clips, there is a vision element. Our vision can recognize the target as fast as 100 milliseconds. So to get a fast response time after our brain recognizes the target, we need anticipation. So to be as fast as Zekee, we can't just be focusing on aiming. We have to be focused instead on what we expect our opponents to be doing and visualizing what we think is coming. If you have that down, over time, as good aiming habits and control get better, you will have the motor skills to hit those insane flick shots just like Zekee. Remember some of the questions we asked earlier about our aim quality? Well, we can use a combination of aim trainers to work on the technique and then in-game training to apply changes. I'll drop the playlist in the description, but let's go through some tasks that I think are helpful for overall flicking. The first thing to mention is that ideally you want to try and utilize arm, wrist and fingers. The arm can be used for pretty much everything, with the wrist and fingers being better for smaller movements or corrections. And remember, problem solve like Zekee did. He understood that for him, he had to develop a technique to improve his stops at the end of the flick. What questions arise when you think about your aim, and what potential solutions could you employ? So for micros, take it slow at first if you need to. Everyone's setup is different as we discussed earlier, so figure out with trial and error how you can most efficiently execute your micro corrections. Try to hold all the targets in your mind, focus on clean lines and a tempo that allows you to have at least 85% or more accuracy as you try to push tempo whilst maintaining good technique. For this reflex scenario, it's pretty cool because it really pushes your speed on that initial big flick. And for most players, even with a fast sense, you should be using your arm to initiate that first snappy flick. If the target goes away too quickly, don't stress out. The cleaner your line from A to B, the more time you gain to microcorrect. So focus first on clean lines and eventually the speed will come. Pokeball Auto challenges our precision in microcorrections. You can hold down fire on this one. I recommend binding fire to the keyboard to kill these targets. The reason the task does this is so that you can focus on the microcontrol. Many players struggle with having a controlled landing, where you need to reduce your tension for control and precision. Again, keep applying direct lines, a fast initial flick, and a micro correction. WW3T Voltaic, 50% smaller, gives us another task where we combine all the techniques. But now you have to click as well, to focus on good technique, and remember, like with all the tasks, your vision is important. Focus on the targets you want to hit, but in cases where there's more than one target, use your peripheral vision to plan a route from target to target so you don't have to slow down. Multiclick speed is a fun one. This is great for training that arm speed, and ensure that your lines are as straight as possible and go as fast as you can. If you're missing a lot, just dial back the speed a little bit and keep going. Eventually, you'll start to get a feel for moving that arm really quick. The regular multi-click task here is to give you a chance to put everything together. We focused on all the different parts of flicking, so now we bring it all in. Snappy initial flick, direct lines, good micro corrections, good control of the initial flick landing, and have your vision focused both on the targets and the route you are planning. Now the last one I'll focus on here is Fuglaa pressure in this playlist. And this is really nice for players that want to test whether they can apply these new aim habits while the pressure is on. This is something Elige prefers in his aim training, as in game you're often aiming under pressure, so it's nice to try and replicate that feeling where possible. Applying new aim habits into the game is the trickiest part of all of this, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process. In your deathmatches, scrims, face-it games, wherever you feel like you can afford to focus more on aim, be critical that you are maintaining the correct habits. Also, try to spot weaknesses. Don't be afraid to record VODs and analyze where the errors are and then figure out how you could give those areas attention in training. I know that it's contradictory to say that you should be focusing on aim when you're playing face-it games or scrims, but that is for you to balance. Are you trying to play to correct technique, or are you trying to play to win? Ultimately, we have to find a balance between these. If in doubt, Steeko's aim report that was released by minigod is a good thing to go over. For CS or Valorant players specifically, there are a lot of common errors discussed in this, as well as the fixes. One of the biggest issues tactical FPS players face is not aiming reactively. So if you want to begin to understand this more, check out my recent podcast with minigod, where he discusses this in more detail. I'll also link other videos in the description that speak to this difficult concept so you can get more out of your training. Love my content? Join my Patreon for exclusive extended podcasts, behind the scenes videos, weekly performance tips, and more. Check the description to support me and level up your experience. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.